What is the difference between the Old Covenant and the New Covenant, and which one should you be following? And have you ever heard that there are more than 10 commandments? There's actually 613 laws that God gave Moses for the Israelites to follow. So let's break down each of these, Old Covenant, New Covenant, and let's talk about it. So if you followed me long enough, you know it all starts in the garden. So God comes down and establishes this wonderful and great world. And you know what's so beautiful about it is that he created humans, Adam and Eve, and he gave them full dominion and domain over everything here on the earth in the garden. And so the first partnership was established, the covenant between God and man. But we all know how that ended. So we humans rebel and we decide to be our own gods and establish our own world with our own order within it. And now because of our decisions, our humanly man decisions, we are now stuck in this broken, injustice, sinful world full of death. And it's not just Adam and Eve. I mean, every partnership God tried to create and redo things and give man an opportunity. We just continue to fail because we're born into the sinful world and we have a sinful nature. So this brings us to the Old Covenant that was then established. God looked across man from Adam all the way up to Moses and was like, these people are sinful, they all deserve death. And so what he did was he took a smaller group of the people, the Israelites, and he chose these people to carry out the Old Covenant of the Old Testament. So the Old Covenant was the law that God came down himself and established through Moses with the Israelites, his chosen people. And this covenant was a conditional agreement that was passed down from God to Moses so that the Israelites would have the ability to receive the blessings and protection of God and also to atone for their sins through blood sacrifice. And so you might be asking, why blood sacrifice? If I make a mistake, why does my bird or lamb gotta die? First and foremost, God was letting us know from the beginning just how serious sin was and that we shouldn't just take it all willy-nilly and think that we can just sin and just go on with our day. Also, in Leviticus 17:11, God sheds a little light on why the blood needs to be spilled. It says, "For the life of a creature is in the blood, and I have given it to you to make atonement for yourselves on the altar. It is the blood that makes the atonement for one's life." And so what God is trying to tell us is that when we sin, we are killing ourselves because blood does equal life. And so in lieu of us having to die, his greatest creation in the world, he chose that we're going to shed other blood instead of ours. And so thank you for us, but sucks for the animals. And so the Old Covenant was great in the way that it established God's relationship with Israel. It also provided the moral and ceremonial framework for man. The problem is that it had a lot of inherent limitations. And although there were many limitations, the biggest one is how is man supposed to communicate and connect with God when we were inherently sinners? And the atonement process, the sacrificing process, was not permanent. And so what would happen is we would sin, we would have to sacrifice an animal, and then we would sin again and sacrifice an animal. And then it got to the point to where on the Day of Atonement, when the people would come, they would literally do all of these sacrifices to atone for all of the sins for all of the people. And then they would just leave and go sin again, and then just wait for the next year to go and say, hey, we'll just wait for the Day of Atonement, and we'll just be fresh again and clean again. And so the problem became is that man started to focus on the external. They started to focus on the sins that they did and that they would have to go through a process of works to undo their sins. But what they never really addressed was the internal thing, the heart. And so although I might go out and sin, let's say I kill my neighbor, right? And then I say, God, okay, I'll go kill a lamb and I'm forgiven. Nothing has addressed that feeling that I actually had to go want to kill my neighbor. We have to address that. And that's what the New Covenant does. And so God says, I'm going to come down there myself and I'm going to fix this atonement problem that we have with sin and the wickedness of man's heart. And what we must remember is that God is so big God is such a big spirit that like man, flesh, these meat suits, we can't come in contact with God. So when he came down, he says, I have to humble myself. I have to put myself in one of their meat suits, right? So that I can live their lived experience. One, so that they will understand who I am, that I am actually the mediator to myself in heaven, right? And then also they will follow me and I can show them and teach them the ways and be the actual atonement for what they are seeking, their wicked hearts. I can fix them. And the way Jesus does this is he focuses now on an inside-out approach. And so what he does is instead of having a book of laws that one, you had to read the language and understand how to read anyway. Two, you had to have someone probably teach you or some way to understand the way of the Israelites to even understand God, right? He says, what I'm going to do, every person, Jew or Gentile, no matter who you were, from the least to the greatest, he says that when you are born, I am going to write my now new laws, the new covenant, on every person's minds and on their hearts, so that everyone will know me from birth. And in this new covenant, it's so beautiful because everything goes from the old ways of thou shalt not this, thou shalt, thou shalt, thou shalt. And under the thou shalt model, it was all based upon obedience to the Mosaic laws. But under the new covenant, Jesus says, I will give you a new heart. I will remove your heart of stone. I will place the Spirit within you. Jesus says that I will do these things. It is not by your works, but by me and me alone, my grace. And now that everyone has an internal compass, an internal guide, we now can address the issue with the heart and sin. And so the beauty of the new covenant is that Jesus addresses all of the limitations of the old covenant. And so we don't have to worry about sacrificing any more animals to have some type of temporary reprieve until our next animal has to be sacrificed. Because we can go in front of that judge now in that courtroom and we can look at God Almighty. And no matter what we've done, no matter if we've been speeding or we've been taking stuff, stealing from stores, every time we get that fine or that punishment, the judge looks at us and says, oh, someone's already served that punishment for you. Someone's already paid that fine. You're good. You're forgiven. Now go. Another limitation from the old covenant that Jesus fixed is that he becomes the mediator between humans and God in heaven. And so we no longer have to do like Moses and go on Mount Sinai and literally have our skin glowing and build tabernacles and try our best to bring him to us. Now he dwells within us. And all we have to do is call upon the name of God, Jesus. Through him, only through him, now we have access to the Father. And lastly, he addresses the heart issue from the old covenant. We're no longer working by works. It's by grace and grace alone. The gift that Jesus gave us at the cross. There's nothing that we can do to make ourselves clean. There's nothing that we can do to make ourselves righteous before God. The only thing that we can do is to accept that gift that he's given us. He paid the price to make us righteous, right? And so by trusting in him and loving him, we now have access to have a righteous heart inside out. And so he has addressed all of the issues from the old covenant. And so why would anyone want to still go by the old covenant? I don't know. I think it's crazy because we now have a new covenant. And in the fulfillment of the new covenant, we have all that we need to follow Jesus Christ and to be in heaven with our Father. And this is Eric Scott with the Lions Faith Podcast. And if you're one of those people that just might not know if you're going to heaven or not, right up here pinned at the top, I got a video that will help you through the process of knowing. Like I know I will be there, I want you to know as well. This is Eric Scott. I love you guys. You guys stay blessed. Love you. Bye. Lastly, click on the link in the bio. Come support the ministry. I love you guys. Thank you.